Hello, my name is Dorri Steinhoff. I am honored to have my book, Red Bird Against the Snow Restoration of a Modern Landmark, selected for this year's book festival. Several years ago, my family discovered an abandoned property at a time we were looking to downsize. Although the property was in such a dilapidated state that it was being sold only for the land, the enchanting landscape convinced us of its potential. Red Bird Against the Snow chronicles a 3-year journey of restoring Glenbrow back from ruin. Located on the edge of a wooded ravine, the 1940 house is a landmark example of organic modern architecture. Red Bird Against the Snow shares a rich history surrounding the house, the trials and tribulations of the restoration process, and the joyful experience of living in a home designed to connect its inhabitants to their natural surroundings. The restoration rewarded us in ways we could never imagine. I'd like to share a short reading that provides some of the history of the property. Ted Van Fossen grew up in Columbus, Ohio, attending the University High School that was located on the campus of the Ohio State University. There he met and befriended a young journalist and his wife, Robin Mary Gunning. The Gunnings were a young bohemian couple who enjoyed long intellectual discussions with Ted, often centering on art and architecture, as well as their shared interest in traveling. After a bike tour through France and England in the late 1930s, they approached their young friend, then only 19 years old, to help them select a property for them and to design a house for the site. They would load me into their Willys, the early pre-war name for what came to be a Jeep, to take me to various pieces of land for me to give my opinion of each site for their home, said Ted. During one such outing, the trio drove out east on Broad Street, past the grand houses near Franklin Park Conservatory, the growing village of Bexley, and out to rolling farmland, several miles past what would eventually become Route 270, the outer belt of Columbus. They stopped at a partially wooded site in Blacklick, owned by the Caddy family. Ted told them he thought this should be their site. The house could be designed to marry the open field with the wooded ravine along the complete break that existed between them. It would face south into the view of the ravine, drinking in the sun in the winter and being protected from it in the summer. The Gunnings told Ted they liked French farmhouses they encountered on their bicycle tours in France. They had one stipulation. The house could not have a flat roof like the modern architecture they encountered during their travels. Ted Van Fossen was astonished that Rob and Mary would entrust such a young man. He wrote to his good friends Tony Smith and Larry Cuneo, working on Frank Lloyd Wright's Usonian Armstrong House in Ogden Dunes, Indiana, with the news of the commission and requesting they come directly to Columbus. This was a huge break for the young men, as Tony Smith was 27 years old, while both Van Fossen and Cuneo were each 19 years of age. Smith had the most experience of the three, having trained as a mechanical draftsman for his family's factory, A.P. Smith Manufacturing, a company that specialized in tool making and was well known for fabricating fire hydrants. During an apprenticeship at the factory, Smith learned to use the lathe and drill press. His skills were further developed working as an apprentice under Wright in 1938 and 39, first as a carpenter's assistant and bricklayer, and later he was promoted to overseeing the role of project manager in what the Taliesin Fellowship deemed clerk of the works. The apprenticeship was centered on Wright's principles of organic architecture, integrating a building into its natural environment so it was in harmony with the landscape, the use of locally sourced materials, the role of proportion and scale, and finally that the building should both provide shelter and inspiration. The young men, under the spell of working with Frank Lloyd Wright's philosophy, were thrilled to have such an opportunity to test their knowledge and create a building based on Wright's principles. After receiving word of the Gunning Commission, Smith and Cuneo headed to Columbus to meet with their new clients and work out a design for the house. Their first obstacle was to sell their design to Rob and Mary Gunning. It was not a French farmhouse, and it did not even have a sloping roof. In order to freely arrange the spaces and provide the best views of the ravine, a flat roof was dictated to keep the cost down, Van Pawson later wrote. The design featured an open kitchen where Mary would be at the center of activity instead of shut out like a servant. Views of the ravine from the dining and living space would have little visual separation from the beauty of the outdoors. What we had done was rework the old farmhouse kitchen in a modern architectural way, Van Pawson wrote. Just 3 years after Wright's first Usonian house, known as Jacobs I, now a World Heritage Site, was completed, the young men incorporated a great many of Wright's Usonian principles to design a modern functional house that brought the beauty of the wooded ravine into the living spaces of the home. Smith approached the design philosophically, as he had much in his life. This marks the planning of the city in this country place. It is an addition, not a growth. It's related to the whole as a fourth element, and in measure of the original unity is threefold from a common center. This does not, however, spring from the center, nor does it grow from one of its wings. It stands apart and yet is an element of a new unity based on number or measure. It is a very urbane attitude. It marks the beginning of a specifically human institution as opposed to a natural or organic unity. I hope you enjoy reading my book, Red Bird Against the Snow. Thank you.